This is the Corrections Forward podcast from the American Correctional Association. Here's your host, Rob Green.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode of Corrections Forward is one that I have been anticipating for quite a few weeks. And I have the opportunity today to welcome to our show the 106th president of the American Corrections Association. The work that he has done in this field has just been absolutely incredible. So first, let me introduce Gary Mohr.
Hey, Rob, it's great to be here. It's always great to be in your presence, and it's always great to have the American Correctional Association as kind of a backdrop of my thinking, and so it's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us and giving us your time. So I just have to take a moment. I'm a little giddy because you are an individual, Gary, that I have followed for the 41 years of my professional career, and now you in your 52nd year. You were an individual, to many of us in the field, that when you spoke, we listened, and we listened intently. For those in the field that really understand what a legacy individual is in the field of corrections, you're looking at one. You're looking at an individual through 52 years of his career that have been involved in some of the most momentous change that our systems have seen, a true corrections professional. And when I prepare for these introductions, this is a gentleman of just incredible humility at every turn. But this statement, and this is not Rob Green's, this is how your field has defined you. And I want to read it verbatim. Gary C. Mohr is widely recognized as one of the most influential and respected correctional leaders of his generation. I think that about sums it up for me and for your impact. The awards are numerous, the innovations are many, and the humility is mighty. So I just thank you for allowing me to say a few things about the impact you've had on me, on this association, but more importantly, above and beyond any association, is this field of professional corrections. So my first question to you, Gary, is just tell us a little bit about this incredible career path in corrections.
Well, Rob, I have never heard those kind of words about me before. I mean, that's remarkable, and thank you. Much more than I deserve. Let me just say this. I say this all. First of all, I have to say this because every speech I've given in the last 22 years, I've said, today's a great day to be alive, because it is. It's a day we're not promised. And it's a day, if you think about it, that each and every one of us can make tomorrow better for so many people if we choose to. So today is a great day to be alive, and you certainly did that for me a few minutes ago. But I am the most fortunate person in our profession that I've ever met. I am the most fortunate person. I happened to start my career in a prison in Ohio, July 1st, 1972, at $2.64 an hour. I was a part-time intermittent getting my last year in at Ohio State University. So I was the lowest paid person in the agency, and the opportunities I've been given, and quite frankly, Rob, I've been given so many opportunities that other people haven't been given. I was able to. I was an educator. I was the first federal monitor overseeing a federal litigation to desegregate a prison at the age of 23 because nobody else wanted to do it. And I believed in it. And just a quick story. I was walking out of the prison one day in that job after having that responsibility that no one wanted African-American inmates in their work area. And we did, and I put them there because they deserved it. but I had people waiting for me in the parking lot to fight me. I had one day, an officer ripped his shirt open, buttons were popping off, and all I could think about is I'm going to get fired because I can't fight on the property. So I had those opportunities, and after about 5 years, I got the opportunity to go to central office, go to the old Ohio Penitentiary to classify new inmates and to classify the disciplinary cases, and then went on from that and to as a training director for the state, and had the opportunity to be a prison warden, 4 different prisons in my career, and one of the solemn duties I had when I was actually outside the department for about 2.5 years. I was director of the governor's office of criminal justice when Lucasville happened, and Governor Voinovich asked me to chair the investigation of the riot at Lucasville, which is the longest in terms of days riot in our country. 1993, April 11th, by the way, it extended for 10 days. So I investigated that with a group of people, but had that opportunity. And I'll tell you, Rob, what I saw there and what I felt there impacted the rest of my career and the rest of my decisions through my time as director and even now. And then I had the opportunity to serve with Governor Kasich for 8 years as his director of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections in Ohio. And I knew at that point, Rob, it was my time. I had all of this almost built up enthusiasm about things that I really believed in, and just hadn't been able to be in a position to do those things. And I realized that it was now or never. And I had a governor that was so supportive and knowledgeable and wanted to know about corrections, that he supported me even when his political advisors advised him that Gary Mohr may be a little bit too crazy. We've got to watch him, but he still supported me. And most, how many people have had that opportunity? Very, very few. Rob, one of our great friends, Dr. Livers,
Yes.
because of her gender coming up through her system, missed so many opportunities. And yet she continued to press and excel, and is one of our leaders today in corrections. But I will always say that I have been gifted with opportunities by people that I certainly don't want to let down. And I realize now that the awards and things are one thing, but it's really the people that we help come along with us. That's our legacy.
Well, you hit it on you hit it on the nose. I agree wholeheartedly. I recorded just a brief piece for National Correctional Employees Week, and the focus of it is that we don't know our rewards are who we impact along the way, or who impacted us.
Right.
So in that vein, I know the many that you have impacted. I'd like to move to the topic of professional standards and accreditation. So prior to your tenure as the president of the American Correctional Association, your focus on security practices, human dignity, and the operation as a whole, you saw professional standards and performance-based standards to really be transformational. Can you talk a little bit about just that passion and what you've seen, and if you don't mind, how you use them as a professional director?
Well, I happen I love to write when I have time, and I was pondering all of the turbulence that correctional leaders are exposed to today. Just from the growing population to populations that leaders have to manage in facilities were built decades ago. And yet vision and mission and federal litigation and all of those things have changed. And yet correctional leaders still have, in so many places, facilities that were built and designed for different times, different people, and different visions. So the question is, what do leaders have to rely on to help them achieve their vision, and quite frankly, to stay out of federal litigation in the facilities that they have and environments they have, and after COVID, even staffing. So the standards. What's really neat, Rob, is the standards, professional standards. We have professionals that gather twice a year, right? That meet all day to talk about whether the existing standards should be altered, modified, eliminated, or new standards ought to be plugged in because of the issues they're facing. These are people in the trenches every day, and the American Correctional Association brings them together twice a year to talk about these things. So they're mobile. They're continuing to evolve, and I will tell you that the collective wisdom of that group is far better than mine. So as we think about what we want to do, how we want to keep people safe in environments where restrictive housing has been, a theme of the federal courts, where people are getting longer sentences, populations have increased, staffing has decreased, and we're having to do that. You can't rely on yourself. You have to rely on the collective wisdom of professionals, and that collective wisdom is evidenced in the American Correctional Association performance standards. And our job, we hope that every day, whether it be the staff or those incarcerated, we hope that every day, not only that they end up safely, but in some way, if they had a positive experience. I mean, our job is not to just contain, our job is to change. And that's not just those incarcerated. We need to retain our staff. So as I think about the professional standards and I think about auditors coming in, it's not just about how clean things are, although that's really important, and how many hours of recreation and programming. It's what are we doing for our staff? And the ACA has really, in the past few years, elevated staff wellness to a real peak and pinnacle. And let me tell you, this is amazing to me, Rob, and it may not be amazing to others, but the day I started, July 1st, 1974, Ohio had 8,400 people locked up in her prisons. 8,400. The day I became director, sworn in, January 4th, 2011, there's 51,000. That's over a 600% increase. Think of how many more staff it takes and facilities it takes to manage that population safely. And how do you do it? Well, you do it with standards, and you do it with consistency. You do it with what the collective wisdom of our profession believe are good practices. And then not only do you take those American Correctional Association performance standards, but internally you have your own audit system that mirrors that to continue to every day to reinforce what they do. There's an old saying that we all strive for. Sometimes we make it, sometimes we don't, but to be inspection ready every day. So I just think without those standards, we have no consistency.
Well, I agree, and I so much appreciate in my 39-year career in the field before I came to ACA, I was fortunate to never be in a position to not manage a facility that did not have professional standards in place, ACA standards, even when we had strong state and local standards. But I often, when I'm in front of a group and I talk about that which gets inspected is important.
That's right.
And I often relate an incident from my own career. that when keys, people think keys, inspecting those keys and making sure that key ring. Well, why are we doing that every day? Because I remember the day and the story I heard when it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that key was broke, and a critical key to a door. And then it just escalated to another incident. And those are the basics of what we do, whether it's keys, the inspections of the units, making sure the HVAC systems function as we hope they do, just like in our home. Those are always just the important aspects of corrections, and those very basic things that, regardless of any technology, we can't lose sight of, because it is good practice for those that we are tasked with taking care of. And it's great practice for the individuals
Right.
that are charged with doing it. So your words really resonate.
I have to, as I'm preparing for this discussion, I realized, Rob, it's been 26 years since I was a prison warden. 26 years. But that's important because the last assignment I had was at the Chillicothe, Ohio prison, the largest prison in Ohio, and it was the very last prison to become accredited. It was 26 years ago in Ohio. That was the last one, and it was not accredited because the previous warden had been ill and a lot of issues. It was large. It was built in the 1920s, so it was just not in the mix at that point. But I went there in 9 months. We had to become accredited. Our date was. But what I remember, Rob, in all of those, technical standards that drive our post orders and things are so important, key control, tool, all of those things. But the other thing that is just important, I think it's just important today, is the relationship, the teamwork that's built in getting ready for the accreditation process. And that's not just staff. I mean, that's staff
Yes.
and those incarcerated. And I have pictures of people outside my window as a warden out into the prison yard with staff and those incarcerated in a garden planting flowers in anticipation of the audit team coming in. And then at the end, we had a great audit. At the end, we were in a chapel. We had over 200 people there. I'm in tears talking, but they talked about quality of life, which is in my opinion so important today. Staff retention is a real challenge. Quality of life, and I think staff retention is the key to reducing the vacancy rate. It's not just hiring; it's retaining our staff. And the environments that we create, even in these 1920 prisons, the environment that we can create, the positive environment that we can create, the communicative environment that we can create will sustain staff, will reduce incidents, and quite frankly, will lead to a great career, a happy career.
Right.
I miss going in prisons. I still go in prisons, but I love going in prisons because it is a unique opportunity to see that interrelationship between staff and those incarcerated, and the standards provide the framework for that interaction, and encourage leaders and line staff to engage the population that they're serving. And it can be a remarkable environment.
I did a series last year when as you know, I love to be in the field, and I think as the executive director of ACA, I need to be in the field and seeing and working with and experiencing what's happening to really help set the pace of where we're going. So to that end, it was about the power of presence.
Yeah.
And while we can be so involved in a lot of the books and the theories of leadership and how that works, there is nothing that replaces the power of presence. And when you think about what you've just described, Gary, that is the power of the standards process to create presence, to create that interaction, to create that opportunity to explain to everyone within your command what the mutual mission and focus is. I often refer to the old radio station, WIFM, what's in it for me. So for us to be able to tell our team members, the staff that help us do this work, that why it matters, and then that level of communication when you see what you just talked about. It's a flower bed, but it's also back in that unit where you're talking and communicating with the incarcerated population of, guys, this is why we're doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're doing. And when they see that collective impact and that level of power of presence, I think the standards are a wonderful mechanism to do that. So I so appreciate your energy around that. And again, I've been watching and listening, Mr. Mohr, and thank you for what you share about that. Let's get to a myth and a reality.
Okay.
So for some of our listeners, and we have individuals. I'm today leaving this afternoon to go work with the system that is entering into the professional standards process. But you talked about old facilities, and old or new. I think it's incredible how these standards transcend that.
That's true.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think the older facilities, it's actually, those are so much more important to have those standards and leaders to think about how to adapt those standards to things. I was in a facility that was built in the 1800s, a maximum security prison in another state. And it was one of the most remarkable environments that I've ever been in. And it was because the staff were physically in proximity to their population. Programs were rich in terms of that. Staff felt safe because they had good, solid inspection processes. I walked into the unit, and in a maximum security unit, the population was out. They didn't even pay attention to me walking through the unit because they were engaged in other things. And I will tell you that the expectation of the professional standards as it relates to professional staff, to medical staff, to mental health staff, to leadership staff, to case management staff, engaging with the population and programming and looking at schedules to ensure that there is a productive activity is critical, and it does transcend. And that is what, quite frankly, that was one of the finest maximum security prisons I've ever been in, and it was built in the 1800s, and it operated under a very strong accreditation process. They had been reaccredited multiple times with staff. I remember, Rob, walking in. What was really great, the cells were much smaller then. I guess people were smaller back in the 1800s, probably my size, I'm guessing. But the cell, you had to almost crunch down to get into the cells. And I walked through the block, and I happened to see a female sitting in a cell. And it was a master's level mental health person that was there. Cell door open. She was engaging with staff or with the population. And she felt so positive about the influence that she was having. And I will just tell you that in a facility that doesn't follow our professional standards, you would not see that. You would not see that. And
it's a great point.
Rob, how much emphasis our standards place on rounds and staff presence. And as we say, this is a people business.
Right.
And people influence and impact people. And I think I think at the crux of the professional standards is that is at the core. And whether it's looking at key control or tool control or those other kinds of security practices, it's still people managing a system, people engaging and involved in a process that influences and impacts the incarcerated population. And it's through those standards that communication exists. And I don't care whether it's a brand new facility or built in the 1800s, that premise stands. And you know, I just think that I have such respect for correctional staff. Let me just say that I want to say this because at my age, I may forget to say this, and I want to say that correctional employees are the greatest public servants of our time. They're underpaid. They are not respected by the public like they should be. They're often not considered first responders, and yet they do respond to more incidents that could cause loss of life than any other first responder. And so we owe as leaders to protect them as much as we can, to provide a safe environment, and to allow them to feel like they're influencing their communities by turning folks back. So the standards that we have elevate our staff and elevate the importance of their work to a point that without those standards, I can't. I'll just tell you what, I can't imagine managing a prison that's not accredited. And the American Correctional Association has an award called the Lucy Webb Hayes Award.
Yes.
And by the way, Lucy Webb Hayes lived in my town of Chillicothe, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She was married to our first president of the American Correctional Association, Rutherford B. Hayes, from Ohio, by the way. But we think about Lucy Webb Hayes, and we think about her pursuit. She was in jails back in the 1800s, teaching people how to read. But I'm proud that Ohio was the first recipient of the Lucy Webb Hayes Award, which encompasses complete accreditation of the system and complete compliance with the PREA standards and audits. And I just want to say this about this. We think about standards and accreditation and ACA. It's much more than just institutional security. I mean, it is. You look at training, staff training, training academies, prison industries. It provides leaders with a script to lead and to manage these systems, and it's essential. Rob, we talked earlier. I don't mean to talk all the time here, but we talked earlier about the fact that correctional state leaders have an average tenure of 2.8 years in the seat. As you say, it takes a while to even figure out where the restrooms are in 2.8 years, or your facilities are. But the standards allow someone to come in and start managing and leading a system and sustaining a good product. And then that allows them to think about further innovation. If you don't have those professional standards to rely on, then you're coming in and starting with a blank slate. And I can't even imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And as we know, we're going to be looking at considerable change, potentially in our governors and in leadership in the coming elections. But that being said, these correctional leaders, these individuals that are there, that are doing yeoman's work, I just want to encourage our leadership that is listening. One, those that are working in this field, we see you and we appreciate you. And two, that hopefully our leaders that are responsible for the decision of where corrections falls in their administration will continue to give them that opportunity to make change. You and I also have a connection you may not know about, in that during your tenure with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, I actually audited some of your facilities. You know, when some folks have the I just didn't come to ACA 3 years ago. I've been a consumer of ACA
I know
since
that. I know
1986. 1986 when I had a sheriff that said, "Listen, I want to become accredited," and he made me the accreditation manager. The single most important thing that happened in my career that allowed me to look behind the scenes and understand really how to bake the bread, what went into every aspect of these positive outcomes. And many of them were the opportunity to do audits in Ohio. I was a local correctional practitioner, but ACA afforded me, because of my interest and my desire to want to do it, to start learning in the prison environment. And I've always got to speak his name, Tim Cohane, who is was a friend to you and I both.
Right.
Retired Federal Bureau of Prisons. We named an award after him after his untimely exit from this life during an ACA audit. Tim Cohane, but Tim took me. He and I did audits in Ohio, and he allowed me. They sent me with him into prisons to learn, and I went in prisons in Ohio of all shapes and sizes. And there was one absolute that crossed them all: the engagement of the staff. They knew what it was about. They were pulling in the same direction. And one of the things that I always promised myself is, starting my career handing out soap and toilet paper in 1984 and not really understanding how everything moved, is what I didn't like is when the boss brought somebody through on those limited times that we had guests and we had visitors, and they walked past me and they didn't introduce themselves. So I always make it, and I know you do the exact same thing, that you always make it a point, shake the hands of the people doing the work, because they are just absolutely incredible. And it was this connection across all of them that just so happy about what they were able to show you, to talk about what they did and what their career was, because they don't get to take their show on the road like others in public safety. And I know you've tasked me with different things over the years in our relationships, like performance monitoring visits, which we're going to talk about next.
Good.
But you mentioned that this idea of our correctional staff and the recognition of them as public servants, and I just public safety servants, and where they're at. I hate to say in comparison, but what I've learned sitting in this chair is really, with many of our leadership, it's not intentional. They don't know. And things like this, where we have the opportunity in this chair to be on Capitol Hill and other places talking about what corrections does, the difference we make, it's resonating. They hear us. They see us, the work that you are doing. They hear us. They see us. So I do believe that the best days of that level of understanding of what the corrections employee does, whether it's a case manager, a nurse, a psychiatric case manager, the correctional officer, the maintenance officer, dietary officer, whoever they are, they're getting that recognition now, and we've got to keep pushing that. So thank you so much for talking about that. So another element of you and I's relationship was, during your presidency, you were a strong proponent of moving forward with something we call PMVs, performance monitoring visits. So within the accreditation cycle, which occurred every 3 years in preparation to moving towards your accreditation hearings before the Commission on Accreditation for Corrections, you introduced, along with others, the idea of the performance monitoring visit. And I was one of the ones tasked with delivering that. And tell me why you thought the PMVs were so important.
Well, I was very, very upset at some folks that were in political office in Washington that wanted to describe the accreditation process as a sham.
Mm-hmm.
Literally did. And I'll tell you, those individuals never stood in front of an audit team representing a facility that went through an audit process, because anyone that has knows that it was a tremendous responsibility on everyone's part, and it took hard work. Listen, accreditation, to be accredited by the American Correctional Association, takes work. It takes consistent work by the whole team. And I was, quite frankly, I was outraged by anyone that wanted to dismiss that process. So it became important to me to continue to elevate and lift up the accreditation process, and to demonstrate that this is really something. This is the foundation of our profession. And one of the ways to do that was to demonstrate that it's not just putting paint on the wall every 3 years and getting files ready every 3 years. It's a consistent effort, daily effort. And one way to do that was to say, we're going to send people in to do a visit, to confirm consistent application of our professional standards, and to reinforce and to ensure that the quality of life in our accredited facilities was sustained, that it was sustained. And so you work through the process to do that. Quite frankly, I'll tell you, Rob, I thought I might get run out on a rail by correctional leaders by saying, boy, we don't, this is too much. But to the credit of our correctional staff and correctional leaders, there's general support for this.
Yes. And it is growing, and it is growing because we are deep into it now. Yes.
And there's pride and I think that's the one thing that I wanted to ensure, that the pride of accreditation is sustained, and that it should be something that we go out into the grocery stores and our local banks and say, our prison's accredited by the American Correctional Association. You ought to be proud that we're a proud community member, and we represent the professional standards of corrections. And I think that's exactly what this does. I mean, it's not to go out and say, I got you on something, I got you on a tool control issue or something. It's to reinforce those processes and to recognize professional consistency in our work. And I think that it may help quiet some of the criticism that we had gotten previously, that was unfounded, but we received it anyway. And I just think that I think it's the right thing to do, and I'm proud of our correctional leaders in accepting it the way they have, and I'm proud of you for lifting that up and sustaining that, when I think the idea when it initially surfaced wasn't as popular as it may be now. But you led that charge. You led that charge in that bus, wherever we were leaving. You turned around and says, I'm going to get this done. And you did. And I'm very proud of it. And in facilities that I've gone into, and I go into a lot of facilities still all over this country, accredited facilities and reaccredited facilities, it is accepted. And there is great pride, and there's great pride in that seal of accreditation when I walk in, and it's sustained, and that's a big part of this. We have a great profession, and we are a profession, and I hope that, as you say, a lot of the leaders that are in the trenches now will continue to have the opportunity to grow within the system and become the top leaders, because this is not a political environment. We are a profession. When every 4 years we don't change doctors, do we? Because doctors, right? So I think that we are anchored in research now. In 1974, I thought education was a great thing. I just thought it was because it felt good. Now we know, and
we know it's good.
We have so much more research behind us. We are now a profession, being able to write about these, being able to demonstrate our value in programs like this. We are a profession, and
I really like you bringing up the point around research, because whether it's professional standards, accreditation, impact of education, now workforce development, which is something that concerns me, the future, as people begin to look at changes there, that it's just so important, the research. And, when people like Dr. Alan Beck in 1995 to 97, an individual you and I both know about, some of the first research in our field really started coming out, being brought to light by the National Institute of Corrections, by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And we started looking at the research around impact of education. Did you know a high school diploma, you're 43% less likely to return to incarceration? That was incredible. And it wasn't a one state or a one-off study. It was impactful across this entire country. And now we've built on that. So this value of research, Gary, is probably a topic, quite frankly, for another day. It's not that it doesn't feel good anymore. We know it works.
So that maybe you can put this in the next episode. But I had the opportunity to bring Dr. Ed Latessa, who won the Researcher of the Year award presented by the American Correctional Association, Ed's now passed. I had he and his team in our prisons in Ohio when I was director for 3 years. And he looked at every single evidence-based program, from vocational education, academic education, intense outpatient drug treatment, therapeutic communities, all of those things. And after a 3-year study, he statistically identified program by program the impact of reducing violence in prisons and recidivism program by program, and even looked at, if you participated, this was the impact in reducing violence and recidivism. And if you completed the program, this was your impact. And then even looked at combinations. If you did this program, okay. So it just, and you know what? The American Correctional Association listened. And those professionals that came to ACA, the winter and the summer Congress that met on to look at the standards, considered all of these things. And if you look at the more recent standards, they are research anchored. And just so we continue to grow as a profession, thanks to the American Correctional Association.
Well, Gary, this has been the most enjoyable part of my day today. I am sure you have, again, sparked the passion, always reminding me, and I don't have to look far to know why I love this profession. And in my 41 years, I can't imagine doing anything else. But you are far from retired, my friend. And I don't even like to use that word with you, because when you left Ohio, I think you're working harder now in this field than you were then, because you're making so much impact. I see you in the field of architecture and design, and again, helping with federal cases, and looking at leadership programs and classification. You are having an impact that is extraordinary still to this day, and we thank you for it. As we vision the future of corrections, and I'm excited for tomorrow and the next day. Gary, give us that inspiration of what we need to do to keep the momentum moving forward in this incredible profession.
Never forget about our staff. Our staff are the greatest public servants of our time, and our staff execute the job every day. it's not necessarily what we do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but sometimes it's what happens at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, in the middle of the night, and we're not there. We have to rely on training our staff, not just what to do, but why we're doing it. And we need to give them an environment where they feel that they're contributing to their communities by creating safer communities. And when they come to work, they can smile. And we need to continue to think about their environment. Do they have places to go in their prisons at times to get away from things?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have an environment where they can enhance their physical wellness? And in these 12-hour shifts, are we providing food options that are healthy for them? And I think as we continue to think about the influence and impact of the American Correctional Association, I believe staff wellness needs to be right at the top, because a happy staff, a staff that feels fulfilled, will execute and contribute to environments that are safe, and ultimately provide safer communities based on those leaving. So let's keep our staff in the center of our thought as we move forward.
Well, I could not agree with you more. And you are known for your sayings, the things that you often leave people with. And I know your affinity for the sport of baseball. And when you gave your acceptance comments at the ER cast, you had one that particularly struck me around baseball. Do you recall?
I was such an emotional wreck at the ER cast.
Maybe around Lou Gehrig?
Oh, yeah, I did. And today I still feel that today I'm the luckiest man on this planet, in this world. And based on your opening comments that I didn't deserve, and just the ability to sit down with you for an hour, Rob, and chat, and having the opportunity to be the 106th president of the American Correctional Association. I am the Lou Gehrig today. I feel like Lou Gehrig today, the luckiest man in this world. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, and more to come. Gary Mohr, you're a difference maker in our profession, and we're going to continue to listen for more. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a part of our podcast, Corrections Forward. Look forward to seeing you on a future episode. Thank you.
Thank you.